that plan was the Martin Luther King Center. It was a plan brought to fruition through collaborative through city staff and the citizens of Rock Island. The goal for this was to provide citizens one place where they could gain access to all of social services they would need. What's so interesting about this is that it was built on all of $540,000 back in the day, entirely grant funded, and it was completely unique at that time. The building was completed in December of '74, but we opened on March 22nd, 1975, with this august group as our first board of directors / advisory committee. The King Center opened with the mission to provide opportunities for a diverse population through a variety of programs and services, and a vision to be a flexible and responsible organization to develop all citizens. What's notable is that 36 short years later, after the King Center began to evolve, providing its own programs, outgrowing that facility and needing to evolve, the board of directors authorized a capital campaign in 2009, completing it in 2010, raising $3.6 million for a brand new addition to the facility as well as total renovation within the facility. The King Center is unique. We are a nonprofit and we are a city department of Rock Island. Back in 1975, the King Center was under the HR department, but still had an advisory committee to serve on for its nonprofit side. So this is our organizational chart. As you can see, City Council plays a major role in the Martin Luther King Center, providing guidance to the city manager, who manages my position, as well as appointing to the MLK board, who again provides guidance for my position. We have 10 full-time staff, including myself, and a variety of seasonal and part-time staff beyond that. The challenge doesn't really exist for me. I think this is pure synergy. The division of roles and responsibilities has allowed the King Center to grow almost exponentially in the last 5 years, to be honest with you. The King Center board is responsible for the mission and vision, while the city of Rock Island hires this position, manages it, and evaluates it. The King Center board provides financial oversight and provides direction for the budget, while the City Council approves the city budget. City Council also provides the personnel policies for the Martin Luther King Center. Our board strategically plans for our programs and our services, while the City of Rock Island determines compensations for all of our employees. The board of directors is responsible for the programmatic parts of the Martin Luther King Center, so is responsible for the resource of development of the programs, but also responsible for a portion of the cost that the building incurs. The city does provide funding and support for our facility and our administration. As you well know, the mayor appoints to our board, but the mayor has been gracious enough to allow us to provide a recommendation or what would be a good fit for this board, which is an important role for our board of directors. And our board approves the tax return for the Martin Luther King Center. Unique, but it works exceedingly well. Please stop me if you have any questions at any given point. Our board consists of 11 members with a chairperson, vice chair, and a treasurer as our officers for the board. They govern the 501c3 aspects of the Martin Luther King Center, our official nonprofit status. Our terms are 3 years each, and after 2 consecutive terms, a member is required to step off the board for a period of 3 years. We have 4 committees: resource development, governance, finance, buildings, and ground. And by ordinance, we do have an alderman and the head of finance to serve on our board of directors. So there's always a good balance of influence from the citizen side, from the programmatic side, and of course from City Council. Our slate for 2020 board members is set. We're very excited about this group of folks being a part of our board of directors. And I do want to take note that we do have several members of our board sitting in the audience today as pure support from myself. Gentleman here, and of course Stephanie here. Did I miss anybody? Good. Our brand new members are Ms. Amy Bland, who owns Holiday Creative, and Mr. Kenny Massey, President, CEO over at Modern Woodman. Now, The expenditure budget for the Martin Luther King Center this year is close to $1.2 million. Most of it, not surprising, is in our personnel. And of course, that's appropriate for a nonprofit, seeing how our people are our service delivery. That makes up about 75% of our total expenditure budget in the coming year. The next largest portion of our budget is within services, and it's about 14%. You can, those services include things like contractual services for direct service to our youth and to our clientele at the Martin Luther King Center. Supplies, another 2%, other 5%, and then 4% in transfers. And the transfers are simply money moving from fund to pay for different services, different aspects of the King Center. A good example is some of the administrative portions of managing the grant actually pays to the administrative fund of the Martin Luther King Center. We can make clarity of that as we get back into the budget in about what, next month, right? Okay. Our revenue budget will be about $1.163 million next year. A small shortfall, but we expect throughout the course of the year we'll be able to make up that shortfall of about $31,000. It's not unusual for us to be at this point this time of year. But what's interesting about this chart, it tells you all of our funding sources, at least our main funding sources, and to what they are attributed to. City of Rock Island is responsible for $184,000 of our budget in the coming year. $169,000 of it comes from general fund, and then we see $15,000 coming from gaming, which goes towards capital improvements of the facility. Those funds pay for administrative and building costs. The rest of these sources really focus on programmatic services, and a portion of it does go to some of our building and administrative costs. But the main purpose of these grants are to provide services to the community. Our largest revenue source is the state of Illinois at $570,000, and it provides quite a bit of services I'll get into in just a bit. But it makes up close to half of our total budget. All those funding sources go to these specific services, programs, and services that we have at the Martin Luther King Center. Our programs include an after-school program, summer day camp, substance abuse prevention, teenage pregnancy prevention, family advocacy center, active club, the Metropolitan Youth Program, boxing club, and the cause. We have several events, and we provide community space, which really, if we took out community space and put in lease and rentals, you will see that that is truly a revenue generation portion of our budget. Is there any detail I could provide to you on any of our programs? Certainly our after-school program and summer day camp are self-explanatory, but I'm so used to providing this presentation in a variety of settings I don't know how much I've informed you of as of yet. Yes?
First of all, I apologize for being late, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
When I read through the presentation before coming here, I noticed there was, as far as events, nothing listed on the bottom three or four boxes there. But I know that those organizations are active in different ways, like Metropolitan Youth Program. Mm-hmm. Could you mention a little bit about what each of them do?
The last three? Or yeah.
Four.
Okay, so let's start with the Active Club. That is a volunteer-led program for some of our more experienced citizens in the Rock Island area. Eligibility includes being at least 55 years old, and that's just about it. They provide a social outlet for the members of the group. They meet at least once monthly to talk about activities they're going to be a part of moving forward. They've also provide quite a bit of services back to the Martin Luther King Center. For many years, we've relied on them to help serve our lunch at summer day camp to the kids. They also play a large role at the Quad City Youth Conference coming up very soon. They have been members of the Senior Olympics in Rock Island, used to be at the Carver Center. And they've gotten to the habit recently of raising their own money for major trips for the organization. Last year, the year before, they were able to go to New York, and before that was Washington, D.C. So it's a strong support for a portion of our population that's at risk to be isolated. They celebrate their birthdays, they know each other very well, and I do invite you all to come to some of their events. Their style show is fantastic. They have 2 year, and they have a Christmas party at the end of the year.
How large is the group?
About 100 members.
Really?
I would say about more than half are Rock Island residents, and the rest of them comprise the greater Quad City region. oldest member is over 100 years old. Metropolitan Youth Program, I know many of you are quite familiar with that program. They are a drill team but slash dance team, and in fact, we're seeing more emphasis on that drill team or that dance team portion of it, although we've just recruited some brand new, very, very young drummers to be part of the corps. They perform in a greater Quad City area, but beyond as well. They're a big part of our family fun day if we're able to have a drill team showdown at the end of the event, a rather unique event that used to happen every year about a decade ago that we'd like to see come back to the Quad Cities. Our Rock Island Boxing Club is actually a very small club. It's about 3 members that practice about 3 times a week and enter in competitions sparsely here and there. A couple of the members of the boxing club have been recognized nationally for their skill set. And those 2 members just so happen their dad is the coach of the program. Again, those 3 are volunteer-led programs. And then the cause is a coalition spearheaded by the Martin Luther King Center towards reducing drug and substance abuse within the Quad City region. One of probably their biggest efforts that you may know about is Drug Take Back Day. We are a major part of that planning for that on a biannual basis.
Thank you for explaining that.
Oh, thank you. Looking at our programs and their funding sources, I thought this would be important for you all to know. As you can see, we have the after-school program, summer day camp, and so on and so forth from the previous slide, but next to it are the funding sources, most notably understanding that these are grant-funded programs for the vast majority of it. Second are our events. We really do strive from, especially with guidance from our board of directors, to make these self-sustaining events as well, and have made great progress with that. Actually, this past year, the memorial service was completely self-supporting with local grants, fees, and sponsorships. Our legislative breakfast is completely supported through sponsorships. Family Fun Day, through fees and sponsorships. This past year for Thanksgiving, we received a large grant from the state of Illinois. So it was a $12,000 program totally funded by grants and fees. It's going to be difficult to sustain this coming year, but with the fact that we're able to cultivate new volunteers and hopefully new donors, we'll be able to do so in the coming year as well. And the same can be said for our Christmas party, where we're able to serve over 400 kids with gifts for the Christmas time. And it's completely, again, supported local grants, fees, but most importantly through Rock Island Kiwanis, who has been a partner with this program since its very beginning over 40 years ago. Our lease and rentals provide us close to $32,000 to $33,000 a year. Our Ida Robinson Banquet Room is doing quite well. We project $25,000 from it this year. We did raise our fees, but so we might exceed that projection. That's the hope. And then we do provide office space for the Rock Island Bible Church, for Arrowhead, and for Two Rivers Wide. That's bringing us about $7,200 a year. I did make mention that we do gain revenue off our tax services, and that's important in so much that, yes, $1,000 is relatively small, but that tax service serves about 400 people in the given tax season, bringing back revenue to the Quad City region and to the Rock Island area. And we're the only drop-in tax preparation site in the Quad Cities. How we fit into the city's budget. This slide is the same slide that Stephanie presented to you in regards to the budget to be in November, I believe. And what I've added to it is simply where our funds fit into on this pie chart. So you'll see on general fund that the MLK is about 0.4% of the total general fund. We're also 1% of capital funds, and we are 2% of the economic development budget. 3 things that we're incredibly proud of in the past year. At the beginning of the year last year, we were just overwhelmed with the fact that the Rock Island Community Foundation named us the outstanding organization in the Quad Cities. Total surprise, and we are very honored with that honor. But what's just as exciting to me was that our board of directors was able to create a brand new strategic plan moving into the next 3 years of the Martin Luther King Center. And in doing so, was bold enough to create a brand new mission and vision for the organization moving forward. For our from 2020 to 2022, we'll be focusing on 3 areas for the Martin Luther King Center. We want to strengthen our brand and message. Certainly, being more precise with our messaging and our branding will bring more people to join us to be a part of the mission that we see moving forward for the King Center. That will lead, of course, to diversifying our funding, high quality and outcome-driven programming, and we would like to provide a welcoming 5-star facility for the Quad Cities. Our board of directors, I think, did a fantastic job with our brand new mission statement moving forward. Our mission statement moving forward is going to be, the King Center inspires greatness in the Quad Cities through community building, education, and service, with a vision of a thriving, beloved community rooted in justice, equity, and respect for one another. It encapsulates what we are while still incorporating some of the major tenets of Dr. King's dream, his legacy, and his work. I think it's a great and perfect fit for our organization. Discussion.
Any questions out there? I guess I'm going to remind, or I don't think you mentioned it, but a couple years ago, we did amend, I don't know if it's the bylaws and/or the ordinance, and allowing, I think it's 3 members on the board to be outside, board members to be outside the city of Rock Island. A majority of our boards are obviously citizens in Rock Island, but yet those board members have ties to either Martin Luther King or Rock Island. And I give the example of Kenny Massey, for example, happens to live in LeClaire, but business is CEO of Modern Woodman, and here and everywhere else. So I think that was a very positive move they made a couple years ago, and the city council adopted. It broadens, Martin Luther King now touches, obviously outside even the city of Rock Island, quite a few people, and continues to grow that way, even on the Iowa side. And it broadens the depth of knowledge and potential even with fundraising and that sort of thing in the future. So it was a very positive move they made. So just to let you know, it's one of the boards that does allow that to happen.
I want to also thank the fact that the city providing the $169,000 from general fund allows us to leverage an additional close to $1 million to come into the city of Rock Island and provide our citizens with very important services that are well used throughout every year. Every year at the Martin Luther King Center, we're reaching over 2,200 kids unduplicated in a given year, while we do reach over 20,000 lives as a whole at the Martin Luther King Center with those funds. So from the board of directors and our staff, we thank you for that.
Jerry, can you go back to the slide, the personnel slide, and kind of talk about which of those are grant funded?
The org chart?
Yeah.
So all the prevention services to my left are grant funded. The youth services, family advocates, in fact, let's just make it easier for you. The building manager is the only one that receives some general fund dollars, just a very small portion of it for some of the administrative support she provides to the building itself. I'm supported through general fund dollars, but also by some of the grant dollars that fund these different programs as well, as we can charge some administrative cost to the grants that we get from State of Illinois and others.
So during the budget, I received a lot of questions about activities at MLK and where the funding comes from and why are we doing this or that. So this is really your opportunity to ask those questions and fully understand, why we're buying T-shirts or funding a field trip and where that money's coming from. So then when we get to the budget cycle, you'll already have that base knowledge.
Jerry, quick question here. As far as these local grants, could you maybe talk a little bit about where these come from? What the local grants,
Sure.
Just to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit for us.
The largest one is easily the United Way of the Quad Cities. Last year and a portion of this year, they're worth about $80,000 to the Martin Luther King Center. But there are other local foundations, the Quad Cities Foundation, the Rock Island Community Foundation, the Moline Foundation, Heppenstall, which is under the Quad City Foundation. We also have service clubs like Kiwanis, Rotary that provide funding as well. And we do, while we do look for outside grants outside of our Quad City area, we are most ideally suited for these. One thing that's probably important to note that as we expand our reach, it's not even expanding our reach. it is making people aware of our reach. We should be able to qualify for grants on the Iowa side as well.
Thank you very much. And as a side comment, it was a really nice ceremony you had last Monday, and continue the good work.
Thank you very much. It was standing room only, so that means we had about 500 people there. Fire Chief, you didn't hear that.
You wouldn't. I do want to do a shout out to David Levin, just as the former president or chairman of the board, but he's been on the board for quite a long time. And Ted Pappas, of course, is the CEO director of Friendship Manor, and he doesn't live in the city of Rock Island either, but he's one of those ones I talked about, bringing the expertise in certain areas to the board to keep it well-rounded and moving forward. So thank you, the two of you, for your time and efforts. I know it's a number of years, and Ted, I know you got a bit of a drive, so thank you very much. And of course, Stephanie's on there for the
And
city.
Mr. Michael Glanz.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike,
ARC
I
is
didn't
there.
even see Mike there with the ARC. And so thank you very much. Oops. Anything else? Thank you, Jerry.
No, thanks.
Very good. All right. They say we have a hydro dam.
The boiler's working, isn't it? Said the boiler's working.
That's why we need another one. We need a backup one. Yep. All right, sir, you ready?
All right, well, good evening. I'm going to give you a update on our hydro plant. The update will include a brief history on our hydro plant from 1912 to current. We'll cover the current known repairs needed to return the plant into operation and the estimated cost for repairs and different options to consider moving forward with the lease. I did want to note that I have Lisa Perry in the purple shirt there and Jason Upton. Lisa actually is the manager of the hydro plant. She oversees the day-to-day operations, and Jason is her direct report supervisor. So they may have answers to your questions that I may not have. So how does it work? The hydroelectric power captures the energy released from the falling water. In the most simplistic terms, the water falls due to gravity, which causes kinetic energy to be converted into mechanical energy, which in turn can be converted into a usable form of electric energy. I did not write that, just so you know. So city facilities that receive power from the hydro plant. We have the Mill Street wastewater plant is at 45% of the power received. The raw water pumping station receives 20%, and the water treatment plant is 35%. The utility bills for these facilities are offset by the power generated at the hydro plant in the percentages listed. Funds are transferred from their respective building funds to the hydro plant when there is not enough production to cover the usage at that facility at a rate of 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And the average electrical rate currently for Mid-American Energy for the wastewater treatment plant, raw water pumping station, and water treatment plant is 0.068 on average. The reason why that's an average is they have peak rates, off-peak rates, summer, winter, so that's we did an average there. The 5 cent kilowatt hour is a arbitrary number that was selected previously by former Public Works Director that's no longer here. And that was put in place based on rates back in 2010. So that covers the difference in the production that's not captured. So some of the history, in 1912, the Sears Powerhouse was built. In 1958, it was donated to Augustana College. 1967 was donated to the state of Illinois, and they ceased production. In 1980, it was purchased by Mitchell and Melba White. 1985, the hydro plant resumed production at a capacity of 600 kilowatts. And then in 2008, we purchased the city of Rock, by the city of Rock Island for $1.3 million. In 2010, the upgrades were completed by the city of Rock Island, which we added 2 generators and turbines and increased the capacity of the plant to 1,200 kilowatts, basically doubling that capacity. And the improvements at that time came up to $805,000. So 2020, we currently owe $1.1 million on the hydro plant. That's a current debt, and that is scheduled to be paid off in 2028. Looking at this slide here, it's revenues and expenses. These were pulled from our expenditures, what comes in and goes out. And the number I wanted to point out to you and CY 2014, why that is so low, was that was a 9-month budget. And looking back, about 6 months of that time was in flood season, and we could not run the plant. So that is why that number is so low. This next slide is very interesting, and Randy may have some input on this. This was when we purchased the hydro plant and doubled the capacity. The actual production projected is that red line there, and we were looking at approximately 5.3 million kilowatts per hour was estimated to receive, and as you can see, we never met that goal. You know, a lot of variables come into play with that. Obviously, high water, power failure issues, maintenance issues. There's a lot of things, and we'll talk about that later. But you know, when you look at production and what we hope to receive, we just have not been able to capture that amount. So when you think about the hydro plant, we talk about the operating head required to run the turbines. And this is a slide just from last year's production. And obviously, we all know we had flooding in 2019. The operating head is the change in water levels between the hydro intake and the hydro discharge point. If the plant were functional last year, we would have only been able to capture or run one of our generators for 5 months. We have 4 generators. And only running one generator for 5 months is bad. The top line is the minimum head required to run all 4 generators, and that's at 10 feet. So you're looking at 10 feet difference from the intake and the outtake. And we never had last year enough head to run all 4 generators if needed. We didn't run at all because we have power failures and other issues, but just looking if we could have run, we could have only run one generator for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. So, anyone have any questions at this point?
Back in 2008 or 2010, who projected the production? Who came up with the red line?
So they took the production of 2 generators, their average, and then we were adding 2 more. So they used 80% of that proposed generation, assuming it wouldn't double it, but it would be 80% more. So that's where
We just did that in-house?
well, they did calculations on it. You'd have to talk to Bob Hawes, who's an engineer. I mean, there was quite a bit of work that went into it to figure that out. But it was based on 2 generators do this, 4 generators will do this.
Right.
And we've rarely reached even what they were doing on 2 generators, but never have. So that number, that line was supposed to be the average, you know, between your highs and your lows. And in our best year, when we had low water, low water, so a lot of head the whole time, we didn't even hit the average. And I did ask Mitch White, who was the previous owner, why that was, and he said he didn't know. He was our expert, so.
Right, yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking is,
I don't.
have we ever had on staff or contracted, have we ever had anybody who knows anything about running a water turbine?
I don't know. A lot of work went into it. This was a several-year process. I can send, if you're interested. We've got, Public Works has all of the old presentations that were given to council along the way when we thought about buying it, as we went through the calculations and then came up with it. Who actually did it? I'm assuming we had one of the local engineering firms.
Black and Beach was the engineer
Okay.
we had, that was consulting on this when we. They were
Okay.
the ones that made the projections for this, and then also leads into, how we can make money from
Yeah, we had projected at least $40,000 a year in renewable energy credits, because you generate credits for, not the old generators, but the new generators generate credits that people might be interested in buying. And I think initially it was almost $20 a rec, and by the time we came online, we couldn't sell them for $1.
And we have
The
about,
market went to wind and solar and not,
and I did check on how many RECs or RECs we have currently. We have about 18,000 RECs available, and we talked to someone in Springfield about current estimated value, and they're about 5 cents a piece. So, not worth hardly anything anymore. Everything's going to wind and solar.
Okay.
All right, shortfalls in generation. So any shortfalls in the hydro plant account as a result from high river levels, power failures, equipment failures, et cetera, are covered by transfers from the sewer and water fund at 45 and 55%. And these numbers below here were from 2018 of what was transferred from those, from the water and sewer fund back into the hydro plant. So total known repairs. We did a RFQ back in March and only had one person submit a request, and that was Modern Hydro out of, I believe, Wisconsin. And they came back and gave us a cost estimate and design, which was this total here of $167,000. So basically, one of the Sumitomo generators has experienced a failure of the oil seal, which led to severe damage of the internal gears. The other generator was taken out of service after a maintenance inspection revealed that the oil seal on it is near the failure point as well. The investigation into why this failure occurred discovered that the original design of the generator's connection to the turbine shafts did not include the proper support for the weight of the turbine. So all of the weight of the turbine is suspended from the gearbox, which caused a premature failure of the oil seal. If the repairs are made to the gearbox without correcting this flaw, the connection between the gearbox and the turbine, the replacement parts will fail as well. So we have known repairs, we have about $167,000 that are needed just to return the plant back into operation.
Mike, I have a question, please.
Yes.
So I'm going back a couple pages here. It talks about the upgrades in 2010 where the city added 2 generators and turbines, which I guess it looks like you're referencing these by number. Which ones would those have been?
Numbers 3 and 4.
Okay, my second follow-up question to that would be, since of course we're new on, some of us are new on council, can you give us some history on what these repairs that have been required over the past few years? I mean, and I see this as what's required now. Were there other repairs like the previous couple years, and what, I guess a little bit more history on?
Lisa and Jason.
Off the top of my head, there was some repairs done in 2014. There's issues with, there are gates at each turbine. There are what we call wicket gates that allow the control how fast the water is coming through to turn the turbine. There's hydraulic system that runs that. There's been repairs to that over the years. It's from 1985 when Mr. White set up things. And there's been bearings over the years. Right now, one of the turbines that are actually turning, they're the original one from 1912. And they have wooden bearings.
Okay.
That's one of the things that's in this $167,000. What we refer to as turbine number 2 is one of those that was rehabbed by Mr. White. It needs wooden bearings, and just the thrust bearing, which is the smaller of the 2 bearings, it's approximately 6 inches tall and about 12 inches in diameter. Just to buy the wood to do that is $18,000 because the wood is ironwood and it's considered an endangered species. The reason we have to stick with the wood and not go to more modern materials is because of all the debris, the grit, the
Okay, so just, thank you very much, by the way. So just to clarify, this seem, from what I'm gathering here, this is the first major investment of repairs that's been needed over the past several years. I mean, this isn't a common figure that comes up every year for repairs and maintenance. Would I
Correct.
be assuming correctly there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have an idea on the lifespan, the lifetime of this equipment? I mean, is this, like we were talking about at the last city council meeting with our energy performance contract, a boiler has a 30-year life expectancy or whatever? I mean, is there standard life expectancies for this equipment?
Are you referring to if the repairs were made?
Both.
Okay.
The generators that we installed, in 2009, they were estimated to have a lifespan of 25 years. However, because you have all of the weight of this turbine hanging from this gearbox, that has caused the premature failure at 10 years. And that was, in talking to, the gentleman that owns Modern Hydro, he has two similar facilities in Iowa. And he's looked at the facility and looked at what had happened to the gearbox, and that was his recommendation. The two older generators that, Mr. White provided, they are what we refer to as right angle drives. So there's an intermediate step before the gears are involved. So not all of that weight's hanging from the gears. Where the two units that we, purchased, the turbine, it's literally hanging from the gearbox. As you know, even when things go around, they don't necessarily just go perfectly in a circle. They tend to wobble and that's what's causing the premature failure. If we do the repairs on the gearboxes, we also need to have, an intermediate bearing design and figure out how we're gonna attach it and adjust the shafts on the turbine to accept this intermediate bearing, and that bearing would take that pressure.
And that's not in that price.
And the ones that have failed prematurely, those are the 2010 ones that the city installed? Or are those the original 1912?
That are the ones the city installed in 2010.
And did we have an engineering firm?
Mr. White provided the engineering for those at the time.
Is Mr. White an engineer?
Yes, Mr. White was an
Thank you.
All right, so next slide, not included in the cost estimate, we just talked briefly about some of those items, is replacement of number 3 and number 4 is turbine oil coolers, installation of the replacement OCBs, disposal of the old OCBs, troubleshooting electrical issues that led to the OCB failure, repairs of these electrical issues, and repairs of issues that may be found during a visual inspection of the turbine wicket gates, linkage arms, rockers, and turbine rudder and shafts. So, once we start running water back through and producing power, all these things that have not been moved or exercised, we know we're gonna experience issues. We can't really put a hard number on cost, but we're looking at possibly around $100,000 of extra things that could come up, related to starting back up. We just don't know. We could have electrical problems in our, switchgear and a whole host of things. I don't know if you had anything else to add.
No, and unfortunately, what the OCB is, it's, an oil-containing breaker. It is our main, contact with the grid, and until we get that replaced, I've gotten a bid on getting a new unit, but until we purchase the unit and we know what it is, they can't give me an estimate on installation because we don't know yet if it will fit where the old one was. There may be modifications that have to be made in order to make the new version work with our equipment. So that's one of the things is, until we move forward, we can't get hard numbers on. Until we get that OCB replaced, we can't diagnose the generating equipment because we have no power to the generating.
Do we, if I may, do we have any break-even point if we proceed forward with all the repairs, or is this something that we're just going to continue to pour money into?
we would say, and all along, I mean, this is the first major repair that we've had besides the modifications that were made in 2010, but that's what we fully expect to have continual maintenance issues moving forward. You know, it may not be whole host turbine replacements, but there's always maintenance ongoing at this, and it'll be discussed here in a few more slides, but
Okay, I'll be patient. Thank you.
so to add to the extra cost that we know of, we had our insurance carrier do an audit, and they recommended maintenance as noted from the previous inspection and estimated cost for the testing required, and these are the items that they would like to see us do, and that is the estimated cost to do those items. We can't do any of that work in-house, so.
Just to keep the insurance?
Yes.
Satisfied to be able to continue operating the equipment, that's what the insurance company wants to see.
Okay.
Lisa, why don't you come up to the podium with Mike here? It'd be a little easier for people watching at home.
So I just included this slide to show you some of the buoy strings, the footings, the anchors, what they look like, where we put them. You know, we go through a lot of maintenance in the spring and fall, and in between that time as well, if we have a flood or a big tree come down. These are put in April or May.
They're supposed to be put in by May 15th, depending upon river levels and safety of our crews to be able to put them in.
And removed in October. And as you know, when we're in high water, a lot of times we cannot remove these, or they get removed by themselves, and we can't respond to get to them because of the danger of the water at that time.
Are these just the buoys on the steel dam, or is these the one, are these the,
Both.
on the north side of
These
the island?
These are steel dam and Sears.
Okay.
So with that being said of the buoy, some other operational costs that are coming and will be mandated, and we've been actually discussing with FERC currently. FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We are in need of updating our buoy string at the steel dam. They have not mentioned anything currently about the Sears Dam. And we have a estimated cost from this company here who did all the design, and that is about $85,000 to do the update of the buoy string. And they're also looking at asking us to install a intermediate attachment point in the center of the river, which we have an estimate of about $65,000 to attach that other intermediate point. So you'd have 2 points on each side of the river and one in the middle.
I
So
would assume if we mothballed this operation, we'd still have to do this.
no.
Yeah, as long as we maintain the lease with the state of Illinois, yes.
Whoever maintains that lease has to do this.
Yes, if we were to terminate the lease, that
Can you
would
talk
not.
about that lease real quick?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's coming
I
up,
didn't
I'm
look far up
sorry.
ahead.
I'm just kind of getting you guys to there.
Yep. Yep.
Next page.
So,
That's right.
I guess going back, this is the current orange circular pattern, and what we're looking at is this new design would be 10-foot wide, with very little space in between. Some of the lease information, so we have an annual lease with the DNR of $5,400. If we're not generating power, that cost is $100. However, we have to provide 3 months of, I'm trying to think of the right word, 3 months of information, documentation that we have not produced power. So in 2022, that fee will increase to $6,300. So we talk about different options with this lease. So if we were to look at terminating the lease, it would require a 90-day notice to the state of Illinois. The request termination of lease due to financial hardship. We would have to submit documentation showing the economic loss of 3 consecutive months in the most recent 12-month period. And as you know, we did not produce anything in 2019. Upon termination of the lease, we would have 6 months to remove the generating and associated generating equipment, except for the turbines. We would secure the turbines. This is all items stated in the lease agreement. We would pay the lease fee of $100 for the 6 months. And then we would cover the turbine pits after generating equipment is removed, make other safety and security measures to the building as deemed necessary, and return premises, including the building, to the state of Illinois in a condition at least equal to that when it was leased. And we do have a document stating how we received it, how would we return that. And we received it in pretty poor condition. So, when I was doing my budget presentation late last year, I think Alderman Spaghettis asked me what it would cost to have, what would it cost just to have the plant, and I believe it was you, what it would cost just to have the plant sit there, basically do nothing. And this is the cost that we came up per year on what that cost would be. So we would have the lease fee of $100, the payment on the principal and interest of $175,000, our insurance premiums of $33,000, our utilities for water, phone, electricity, so we still pay for the water. We still have phone monitoring for our SCADA equipment and electricity for that. Security monitoring through Permar. Our labor costs are in that budget. We still have personnel going down there, monitoring the building, walking through the building. So those labor costs don't go away.
Involved, on the entrance side of the building to the turbines, there, we refer to them as a bar rack. Debris collects on the bar rack, and if too much collects and the water's not able to flow through freely, it will destroy the bar rack. It will push it into the plant. The area, we refer to it as the forebay. That's the water on the intake side of the plant. We get trees, limbs, tires, that all has to be removed on a regular basis from that area. So it still requires somebody on a regular basis making sure that it's being maintained.
Real quick, this is if it sits idle but not terminate the lease.
Correct.
So if you terminate the lease, that changes these numbers.
Yes. So just a summary of the cost. We have the known cost of the proposal that we received from Modern Hydro of $167,000 plus the insurance cost of the $15,000 to come up with that 182 number. We talked about unknown repairs once we return the plant back in operation that we just don't know and we can't capture. We may not have none, we may have several. You know, we put the number of $100,000, but that's probably conservative. And then we also have the mandated repairs at around $150,000 for the buoys and the other midpoint footing. So we have some recommendations that we'd like to discuss tonight and present to the council. Public Works is requesting permission to consider three options. The first one, it would be to terminate the lease with the Department of Natural Resources and remove all equipment in the plant that is owned by the city. We would declare that equipment as surplus and sell the equipment. Option two would be to amend the current lease with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources to a new leasee and sell all equipment in place at the hydro plant to a new leasee. So we would look for someone interested in running the plant and selling that equipment, kind of like what the city did. We took over that plant, we took over the equipment, and we purchased that for a price, and we would be looking at selling that for a price as well. Third would be make the repairs needed to put the hydro plant back in operation and continue ongoing maintenance and repairs as needed. That's kind of a given and something that can be done as well. Reasons to consider the hydro plant changes. These reasons are more for options 1 and 2. Dependable and consistent operation of the plant is unpredictable, as you all know, with the fluctuating river levels and continual equipment failures. I should say also unknown equipment failures. The immediate need for repairs and costs associated to continue the operation and unknown costs of future repairs. And continual maintenance of the buoys, turbines, bearings, and electrical components, including additional costs mandated by FERC. And just the time constraints and overall personnel. You know, the previous supervisor that was in charge of this retired in 2017. We did not fill that position. We passed it off to Lisa, and she's done a great job, but she also has her other duties. And, you know, we're not getting any more personnel. So,
To do the maintenance and even the operation, one of my maintenance staff was trained as the operator, the backup operator, and so that's how I ended up with it. But it takes time away from his duties with the wastewater plant to go and monitor. He has to be there at least 3 days a week to monitor what's going on, to check on the equipment and stuff. In the fall, especially with leaves, it requires 3 times a week somebody spending, and because it's by the water, it requires 2 people for safety. And at a minimum, to clean the leaves off this bar rack, we're talking a minimum of 4 man-hours, and sometimes it's more than that, 3 times a week to maintain this. And we've shared duties with the maintenance staff at the water treatment plant, but either way, it's taking maintenance personnel away from their primary duties at the wastewater and drinking water plants that really need their services.
I have a question. If we terminated the lease with the DNR, would we still own the building?
No,
No, no,
Do we own it now?
no.
Okay. So option 1, if I can jump right in, seems to be the simplest, cleanest, and most cost-saving way to go for solving all these money pit problems.
yes.
Option number 2, if it was even possible, might be something to consider, but I'm not wild about running old world technology that doesn't seem to be working for us. Is there any way to convert the building from hydroelectric to solar electric?
That would be something we'd have to investigate with the state because they're the owners, and so they,
Yeah, the lease specifically says that it would be ran as a hydro plant. There was talks about a restaurant and a brewery, but no, the lease specifically says hydro plant only. That may be revised. We have not had that conversation with DNR. We met with DNR last August, I believe, and Lisa just talked with them last week.
and currently, I'm the expert on the lease, that they're having, when the lease was originally taken out in 1982, it was under, the Division of Water Programs was under the Department of Transportation. And it's since now been under the DNR, and it's just been a document that's been sitting there since 1980. Well, actually, it came out again in 2009 when we took over, but, and talking to the gentleman at DNR last week, I currently am the expert on what the lease says, that they're doing now that I've been doing some fact finding for this, they are looking into, to be more versed on their end as to what, because some of my questions were, what would be, if we walk away from the lease, what would our requirements be to secure the building, make sure it was safe, if we remove all of the generating equipment, there will be no electricity to the building, so therefore, what we refer to as the sluice gate, it's a gate that controls one of the bays that's strictly for flushing the trash, the logs and stuff through the building. That would no longer be operable. The overhead door that we currently use for ingress and egress would no longer be operable. There would be no way to continue to run the security system. So I was asking whose responsibility would that be to, at this point, the state's not sure. He felt it would probably be on them to return service, but that's still a question until they get more versed in what they would expect from us to walk away from the lease. But in talking to electrical company and Mid-American, to put electrical service back to run the bare minimum items, we would be talking about $13,000.
So you had said earlier that the bond will be paid off in 2028.
Correct.
So even if we terminate, we still have to pay.
You would still have the debt.
Right, so we still have like 8 years left of payment on that.
Unless
What do you,
we-
what do you think the feasibility of finding a new leasee? I mean,
The gentleman that had given me the estimate, Mr. Shannock from Modern Hydro, he had expressed possible interest in it until he looked at the contract we currently have with Mid-American, and there's no money in it for him. That we have a better deal, albeit it's it's a, not the greatest deal we have with Mid-American. We only get, if we generate more electricity than the facilities we, offset use, we only, in the summer, we get, 3 cents a kilowatt. In the winter, we only get a penny a kilowatt. So, and he said, looking into, if he would take it over, that he couldn't even get that good a deal with Mid-American.
And in terms of how they're really doubling down on solar, for the adjustable block program, it's 8 cents per kilowatt hour, right, that they're paying us for solar production. So I guess they're just not ponying up for a hydroelectric, are they?
No.
How much, so we don't make any money on the hydro plant when it runs, right? We use the electricity to offset other public work buildings. Dollar amount, I guess, how much do we save? So last year, we could have ran it for 5 months, right?
Correct.
Do we have an estimated amount of money that would have saved Public Works had it been operational?
We don't have it for last year. We did have Mid-American run some numbers for us, and they went from 2010 to current. And if the plant were putting out average production, what that would have brought back to those facilities at the breakdown percentages that we shown of the 45 or 20, however that broke down. And it was in total for the 3 buildings at an average production, we would bring in about $90,000. So, but you can see the transfers that were done. That's nowhere. That's not even half of the power.
313 or whatever.
Right. So, but that's at an average production. If that increased, we would have more savings. But again, it's just not what we thought. Just to follow up on this last paragraph, Public Works obviously wants to focus on what we know, street utility infrastructure. You know, the hydro plant will always be susceptible to high river levels, equipment failures, and mandates. So we feel that one of these options, besides number 3, would be best for Public Works. But, you know, we wanted to bring this for you. This is a decision that is council-related. We're giving you our recommendation. It just continually, the past years, has shown that it's not been successful.
So if you want to just think about this for a while, I know you're just seeing this, let us know what additional information you want, and then we can revisit this here shortly when you're ready for us to bring it back.
I brought up the hydro plant a number of times with our energy performance contract. And every time I bring it up, Randy says, well, we're gonna have a study session about the hydroelectric power plant. I mean, is Johnson Controls or any of the firms, are they capable or interested in looking into the hydroelectric plant?
Yeah, you know, we can ask them. It doesn't fall under the performance contracting because that is taking something that's inefficient and putting something modern in, which is a little different than
And
this. We've already done that here. We put in modern generators, but we can see if they're, what do you want from them?
I would say having a generator that's not producing anything and then producing stuff would be an efficiency increase. Sure, it may not be the same thing as a 30-year-old boiler or whatever, but it would still be an improvement, an increasement. So I'm just looking for a creative way to have a 20-year lease with Johnson Controls to offset the costs, $300,000, to bringing this thing online, because I'm all for getting rid of the hydroelectric plant, but the only thing that keeps on nagging me about it is the 8 years worth of bonds that we still have to pay, regardless of whether we shut this thing off or sell it or whatever. So even if we could squeak out $10 a year in profit, and then we still have $10 more than we had, that's just a number I'm using, to put towards the bond, right? It's a money pit, apparently.
But I
Well, so
think you're gonna have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that $10.
And
Well, that's what I'm
they
saying
cannot
is-
guarantee it because it's based on the river level, the fall of it.
Right.
So this, as you saw last year, actually the previous 3 years, we've had high water. The high years you saw 2012, 13, where we had the most production. Those were years where the river was low and we were getting a lot of fall. So you know, it's high behind the dam and it's low on the other side of the dam, and it's that fall coming over that generates it. So when it's high, that level is almost the same, and that's when you're
Yeah.
not generating anything.
So if we
We
got
know-
rid of it, we would have automatic savings just by not operating it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we would have savings, but we still have those pesky bonds.
Yeah, but you only have them
Put
for
those
8
towards the
years.
bonds, the
Yeah.
savings
You could do that.
of not operating a hydroelectric plant.
Well, the savings are like not performing this maintenance. I mean, so it isn't as if there's that money is sitting there, right? It's not,
But we wouldn't. be
there's no
spending it
revenue. We wouldn't spending it, but it wouldn't
on
be,
Unproductive hydroelectric.
so
plant.
the difference would be then at the end of the year, there wouldn't be as large of a transfer from the sewer and water. That's where the savings would be, but it wouldn't,
There's no labor savings because those people are still going to be working at other places. It's not like you're eliminating that labor.
I think we're better off putting our resources towards something that's not gonna be a financial drain on us, because in order, I mean, you're gonna continue to lose money. In order to do anything to try to make any money, you're gonna throw good money at bad old equipment, and you're gonna lose. And you're not gonna find someone to buy it because it's never gonna be profitable.
The 2 generators that Mr. White had rehabbed, that was stuff he bought used, and, the switch gears for those 2 older generators he bought from, when, Davenport Cement Company back in 1985. That was old stuff when he bought it. And it's just the age of even that equipment, is getting to be a point where we may be forced to do things, that equipment, electric switchgear equipment doesn't meet current arc flash standards for people working around it. That may end up being an issue down the road that we'd have to address, for the safety of our personnel, but.
Has our legal department looked into whatever contract we had with Mr. White when he refurbished this stuff and sold it to us to make sure?
he's passed away.
Does he have an estate? Does he have a business?
He has a son.
I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
I think it's financially prudent of us to
We just vote now.
quit that lease, terminate the lease. Yeah.
I agree.
first try to see if there's a buyer. I mean,
I know.
it sounds
It won't-
like
It won't be profitable for a buyer, so who in their right mind is gonna buy a losing
we
proposition?
can at least put it up for sale, and then if nobody wants to make an offer, then we can terminate
And
the
then in the
lease.
meantime, in order to get it to sale, we're gonna put hundreds of $1,000s into it.
No, sell it as is.
Would be an as-is.
We'd be more than happy to come up with a proposal to have these options in there, obviously besides number 3. We already know what the option is for 3 and the cost. But we could come up with a proposal to look at going both option 1 and 2 and see if we get any success. We could reach out to other hydro plant operators, private operators, and see if they have interest. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in putting this presentation together, and I've done a lot of research in who does it. And so I could reach out to those contacts
But
and
I
see.
think bottom line is it won't be profitable for anyone, right?
I don't know. I mean,
In its current configuration.
yeah, it needs a lot of improvements.
So
You
we
know,
may wanna-
assuming
Bill
you
and
were to,
expense for us,
assuming
then.
you were to get it fully operational again, and in fact, everything lasted 30 years when the debt is paid off, and you weren't putting a lot of labor into it, then there may be some,
There's
but,
more modern, more efficient turbines than what, I mean, we have the 1912 Genesis turbines, that there's more modern ones, but those cost money, to do that if we were, you know, that.
Well, those all cost money, but we still deal with the fact of high water and those kind of things that we cannot control.
Correct.
Yes, that's been been our biggest, because we're not, I mean, it's mainly what the Rock River does, but it's because of the location of the hydro plant being so close to the confluence with the Mississippi River, the Mississippi influences what happens on the rock and in that particular section of the rock, and unless we have that 6 feet of difference, we can't, because it takes that much inertia to get one of those turbines moving.
But so, okay, so say for humor's sake, we're gonna look for someone to lease it, to take over the lease. So we idle the plant, so we're still on the hook for $259,000 a year.
That's
While
correct.
we are waiting for someone to decide they want to buy a losing proposition.
Correct.
Okay.
How long can it take us to get an RFQ out there to sell this thing?
We could probably get together something in a couple months.
I mean, as what Alderwoman Swanson is saying, can we get it sold before we dump $250,000 into it? Or are we gonna have this $250,000 worth of idled expenses for the year before we can see if there's a buyer?
I'm not sure when the payment is due on the lease, if it's early or late in the
I
year.
believe it's the lease payment is.
I'm sorry, not with the lease, with the actual debt.
All interest payments are in June and principal in November.
Okay.
Can we idle it and then put it up? Or does idling it require us to give the lease back to the state?
It's idle currently, I guess I would say. So, we have to submit the 90-day termination to the DNR when we decide to do that. But we're currently idle, besides the lease, the debt payment and any other costs associated to that, so.
One of the other things I think we need to look at, it's been a while since we've read it, you'd asked if we had reviewed it, we have reviewed the lease, but I think that there might be a provision in that says it has to be with DNR approval as well, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if they have some restrictions on who and how we can, and I'll be happy to look into that, but there might well be, unlike, if you go to sell something that you own, there aren't those restrictions, but there may well be limits on the transferability.
When we transferred into the city's name, we had to get their approval. There was a bunch of hoops that we had to go through to get their approval to do
So
for the lease.
if we decide to, let's just say we decide to terminate this thing, so we're on the hook for probably a quarter of that 259,000, correct? Because it's a 3-month time period?
Yeah.
Would that be correct? And then if we were to also try to get a buyer, we're on the hook for another 3 months, so we're taking that 260,000 and we're still going to be on the hook for 130,000 of that. That be correct?
What other liabilities would we have with regard to the buoy system and other things that have to be done for safety's sake?
I think that we,
We're the leaseholder. We are responsible for maintaining the buoys, the signage, which means we have to go and cut back foliage from the signs to make sure they're visible.
Right.
And all of that.
We turn it back to them, then they're responsible for it. We terminate it. and-
Sounds to me like the longer we just put this off, we're continually gonna keep forking out money month after month.
Yep, I agree. All right, we have 3 minutes before we have to start the council meeting. Any other questions? They're critical? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your efforts into this.